Good day, good day. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Jay, and this is Homeschool Yo Kids Podcast. Today we have with us Amber. Amber, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Amber O'Neill Johnston, also known as Heritage Mom. I live outside of Atlanta, Georgia, with my husband Scott and our four kids. They are 14, 12, 10, and 8. The oldest ones are girls, the younger ones are boys, and they have been homeschooled from the very beginning. I also
Nice.
run a homeschool support group, a 501c3 nonprofit here in the Atlanta area for Black homeschooled families. And I write books, I speak at conferences around the country, and I still old school blog at heritagemom.com and do stuff on social media. So my biggest, main message of my platform is diversifying our children's homeschooling materials and resources, because that was a real problem for my family.
Nice. Okay. So how did we get here? How did Amber wake up and was like, you know what? I'm gonna homeschool my kids. Like, how
Yeah,
did we
that's a
get
good
here?
question. So my man woke up with that thought on his mind. I did not have it. So I was raised by two public school principals. And
Wow.
yeah, so both of my parents were retired public school principals, and all of their friends were educators. So that's all I knew growing up. My grandfather and my sister were publicly elected school board members, officials. So we were like all in on public school. Now, my husband and I, just because of where we live, we had decided that I would stay at home with the kids when they were little. And then when they became school age, I would go back to work, and like his salary would pay for our living expenses, and my salary would pay for private school tuition.
Mm.
And that was kind of our plan. But then when it got closer to that time, the plan had some problems in that when the oldest is ready for school, we still had the little ones. So what were we going to do with them? Somehow we imagined they'd all go to school at the same time. So that was one issue. But then my husband started talking to me about homeschooling, and I was like, boy, you got me messed up. Like, that's crazy. I don't do crazy stuff. That's not me. That's not us in a lot of different ways. And but he just kept going, and ultimately he told me that he would really appreciate if I would take it seriously, because I kept laughing every time he brought it up. And that he wanted to know, he wanted to see if I would be willing to try it for 1 year. And he said at the end of the year, if I hated it, he would never ask me about it again. And I was like,
Mm.
deal, right? Because I know I'm gonna hate it, and then I can get him off my back. um, but we did it, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. That was like K4, and now people are like, "Oh, it's not even homeschooling till your kid's school age." You cannot tell me I was not doing all the things at age 4, because I was, and I felt like I was a homeschooler, and I was. And I just, yeah, kept going. So
Wow. So the 1 year got you. How did they get on his radar? He was just like he didn't want the public, did he not like the public school area that you're in? Or did someone mention it to him? Like, how did that get on his radar for him to be so like, nah, I think we should really try this?
yeah, so the public schools weren't great. That's kind of why we were planning to go the
Okay.
private school route. But it was, public private school, we were like, "Oh, it's fine." The issue were it was 2 things. One was super petty in that our oldest has always been really tall and just larger than everyone else. And we went to her little, like, preschool, her 3-year-old preschool class for a parent program, and he was like, "My daughter up in here looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger with all these Danny DeVitos." And he was like, "She's in the wrong grade." And I was like, "Yeah, it doesn't really have anything to do with what you look like." And
The
he's like, "Yeah,
height.
but it's not right. It's not right," you know? And so he's like, "She's super smart. She already knows all these things." Because they gave us like a piece of paper with what they're going to work on the next year. He was like, "She knows everything on the paper already." And I'm like,
Yes.
"Okay, dad." So his idea was he wanted her to start kindergarten that year, the next year, when she really had to go another year of preschool because of her birthday. She has a late birthday, and the school was not trying to budge. And I'm so glad they didn't. But he was like, "Well, we'll homeschool them for a couple of years," because one of his buddies told him, "You could just homeschool for a couple of years and then take her to school, and they'll have to
Mm.
let her in at that grade." So that was his petty reason, because she was tall and super smart, like every parent thinks about their first kid. But then also he had been taking the kids to the park every day. And he met this woman named Judy, and he was like always telling me, well, this Judy, homeschools her kids, and Judy said this, and Judy said that. And I was like, tell me one more thing about this woman named Judy at the park and see what happens. And so one day I went up to the park because I was like, I'm gonna take my own kids. And Judy was there, and she was like, oh, you're Scott's, wife or whatever. And she started talking about that homeschool stuff, and she got to me too. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So it was just this, like, she was a little bit older than me, and her kids were a little bit older than my kids, and Judy had it all together. I loved the way her kids interacted with her, the way that they just were, the way she was. She invited me to her house, and I walked in, and there was, like, fresh baked chocolate chip cookies smelling through the air, and she served me tea. And I was like, "Who is this Black woman?" You
Like the
know?
Mary Poppins of
Yeah. And she was like, "My kids, this is their little learning center, and this is where they do this." And she showed me around. And I was like, "Okay." So I forgave my husband because I was like, Judy really does that have that effect on people. And we ended up becoming really good friends. Um, and what she gave me was the gift of confidence. And that's what I lacked. And so seeing this Black woman that I really admired, I was like, she's got it. She's got it. Like, I would like to be like her. And her telling me, you can do this. Let me show you how you can do this. And that was it for me.
Nice. Okay, so elaborate more on the confidence. Because that is a lot, even though you had parents that were principal. What was your interest like at that time? What were you doing for work?
Well, I was staying at home, and I owned a business that was
Okay.
related to like fitness and nutrition. I would
Okay.
send personal trainers and stuff out to people's houses. So I was an entrepreneur working from home. I really I was just running I just only focused on stay-at-home mom. Like, I knew I wanted to
Yeah.
be a stay-at-home mom, but then when my kids went to school, I planned like I would expand my business, or I would go back to work or do something like that. I just didn't first of all, I just thought that was a very weird thing to do. And everybody that I had met before Judy that had done it, they were to me, they were very odd. And
Mm,
I didn't feel like I wanted my kids to be like that. And I didn't feel like I fit in. I'm not gonna wear a long skirt, denim skirt, and I don't live out in the country. And I was just like, this is not us, right? I don't want to live that life. And so I hadn't had any role models before me. And nowadays people are like, what are you kidding me? Everybody's doing it. But this my oldest daughter's in high school, so we gotta back
mm,
way up and say, "Really? Was everybody doing it?" Not that I knew.
mm,
And so that was one part of it, and I feel like, I also felt that, like, what do I know about teaching kids? And I want my kids to
mm.
have the best. Like, this is not an experiment, I'm not trying to test my theories and stuff. I want my kids to have get a wonderful education, and I want them to be like the top, you know what I mean? Like, I want them to excel in every area. And I just didn't feel like being with me would be the best.
Okay. Okay. So how did you overcome that? Besides Judy, I know
Yeah,
Judy played a big part, but
yeah, she did.
what else?
Well, just giving it a try because
Okay.
I just said, let me, doesn't hurt to try something. So I started trying it, and I started researching and learning it. And I started taking my job as a homeschooling mother, like as an actual job. I studied it. I studied what my options were and how the different ways. I watched other people, learned and listened podcasts and blogs, and read books, and I studied my craft, kind of like self-taught, right? Like the same way you would do if you were going to start any other new job. And so I gained confidence by learning what was available to me. And then when I saw my children thriving, that really, every moment that I saw them thriving built up this confidence inside of me. And at the same time, my friends' kids were going to school, and they were just giving me all kinds of terrible stories.
I was
I
gonna
was
say
like,
horror stories.
yeah,
Yeah.
I said, this doesn't sound good to me at all. Um, and so I just I don't know. I think that that was part of it too. Originally, I wasn't running from anything. I wasn't trying to not put my kids in school. I wanted them to go to school. I was my husband pressuring me. But then when they didn't go to school and my friends' kids were in school and they were telling me this happened and this happened and these were different schools, different families who didn't even know each other, I was like, "Oh, I see. This isn't going to be a fairy tale for my kids."
Mm,
So we'll just keep doing what we're doing at home because I had seen so many amazing, like they were just so wonderful, the things that they would say. And we were also going on a lot of adventures. A lot of our
nice.
homeschooling was away from the house. And man, we were going on, if you want to call it a field trip, we were going on field trips like every day. And it was just like they were learning, I was learning so much. It felt like I was in school again, but in this beautiful classroom that was the world. We started traveling. It's just like, this is the life. Like, I don't see how I could ever let this go. And my kids were just, they still are. They're amazing. And I didn't
Nice.
want to miss out on.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yes, no, really beautiful.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that you fell into it. So like you just adapt basically, and then you saw the beauty of actually seeing them grow and y'all learn together. What methods do you feel like you follow, as far as the classical, um, unschooling,
Yeah.
freeschooling? Where do you fall in?
So I definitely have followed the methods of this British educator, Charlotte Mason, but my
Okay.
tagline has always been, in my home, Charlotte Mason wears an afro. So I really like the ideas she had for how children should be educated, but the materials that I found for how to do how to implement that philosophy was not going to work. It was not going to work
Okay.
in my home. So we do a lot of beautiful books and art and music and poetry. So a lot of liberal arts things, but also really strong in math and science, and a lot of experiential things, making things with our hands, handicrafts, creating things. And it's all infused really heavily with African American culture. It's a real strong passion of mine and something I think it's like a gift that if I don't give it to my kids, no one else will because they won't get it
Mm,
elsewhere. Because I didn't get it. And so that's an really important part of our homeschool, and that's kind of what my whole platform has been built on, is that idea. And I think that it has attracted a lot of people who are like, it seemed like you could either be do beautiful things with homeschooling or you could do black things. That's how it felt. And I was like, why are those two not the same? I want to do beautiful black things.
mm,
And who's doing that? Who's talking about that? And who's using the word beautiful when they talk about Black curriculum resources or Black centered education or anything like that? So that's kind of what I feel like we do. So an eclectic Charlotte Mason approach, maybe,
Gotcha.
with plenty of time for the kids to pursue their passions, a lot of downtime in our schedule.
Okay, nice. What's the age? Because you read off the ages at the beginning. I
Yeah.
know you have
So
the
they go
oldest
from
in high
8 to
school,
14.
8 to 14. Oh, okay, cool. So is it a lot of time as far as they have their own things that they do at certain times? Y'all meet together at maybe like an hour? Like, how does your day look?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we're having a day that we're at home, then we all come together at the breakfast table and we eat while we watch like current events videos and talk about them. And my husband joins us. And then we do what we call morning time. So it's all the subjects that we do all together. So people are
Okay.
like, how could you have something you're doing with an 8-year-old and a high schooler? But we do. We do our Bible study together. We sing. We sing spirituals and hymns and folk songs and stuff like that every
Mm-hmm.
morning. We That's when I read biographies and then life skills. So like right now we're reading a book about the basically the American fast food industry and how it's killing people. And we're also reading a book about personal finances. So we read like life skills books during that time. We read poetry, and we might watch some videos. And will have like a read aloud going, like a chapter book that I'm reading to the whole family. Right now, we're reading this fantasy book. So that time is probably between an hour to an hour and a half. If we're really having fun, maybe 2 hours. And then when we finish that, then it's everybody's independent time. So the older kids scatter and the youngest one stays by my side and I go through his lessons with him. And then I move through the other kids asking, like, do you have questions? Do you need help with anything? If I have a math lesson to help someone with or anything like that. So that's kind of how we do it. We start all together and then we break apart and I spend my time according to age, starting with the youngest, so he can finish while I have whatever I can have from him that day.
Okay,
And then,
nice.
then once I finish with him, he's done for the day and I release him to go play and then I move on to the next oldest one and so on and so forth.
Nice. So are the oldest ones, are they on like a program, or are these assignments that you've given them? How does that look?
Yeah, they're just on my program, the Amber program.
Okay,
So
cool.
they have like checklists that I print out each Sunday night. I put it on a clipboard for them. And we've been doing this since they were 6. So they
Mm,
know the format, they know what they're supposed to do. It'll tell them like what pages to read in this book, or it'll have I might say check your email for a video. I'll email them a link to a video I want them to watch or something like that. And or what they need to write, they have to write every day, like write about this or respond to this statement that I'm making about this book or whatever. My oldest does take math online. The oldest two both take math online now, which is great. um and yeah, so they're not in any program.
nice. So you're building and shaping the curriculum that you
Yeah.
all use. Nice. And
Yes.
that just comes from you researching and picking and choosing, like, okay, this is what we're going to focus on this week. This is what we're going to focus on next week.
Yeah,
And
I
you build it.
plan in the summer for like the whole school year. And like,
Okay.
okay, these are the things that we're gonna focus on, and these are the resources I'm gonna use. And then like each kind of quarter, I guess you want to say, or semester, I don't know. I do it 3 times during the year, and then
Okay.
the summer would be the fourth quarter, right? So I just kind of tighten up the plan based on what we already finished. Like I'm not gonna write page numbers out for a whole year because I don't know where we're gonna be, but
Yeah.
I'll tighten up the plan for the next quarter. And I do use some lesson guides, like I'll purchase lesson guides and lesson plans. But I don't have like I've never found a single program where I'm like, this is what we're gonna do on all their grades and all their subjects and
Hmm.
things like that. Um, and also I like for it to be a little more informal, like than that. I just kind of like to do our own thing a little bit. It's flexible. If my mom comes to town to visit, it's like we're just hanging out with her today. I don't feel like, oh, we missed day 37 of the curriculum I bought or whatever. I start feeling stressed out. We're doing chilling. And then some days we do a lot of work, which I know would probably be 2 days worth of somebody's lesson plans, but it doesn't matter because they're moving through it and everybody's happy. It's pouring down rain outside. Who cares? We just kept
Hmm.
going. And then some days we're just like, oh, we're going to the lake today. And I just really like that free flow, chill mode.
Nice. I love it. I love it for you all. Y'all, like, I know you are a big name in the homeschool community. I've seen you come across media a few times. Tell me about Heritage Mom.
Mhm. So Heritage Mom is really, that's my brand. And I always think of her as like a persona. She's the mom who comes to tell you that feeling of discomfort that you feel inside that something's not right is true, that it's not right. And to say, like, here, I have some other ideas for you. And she's basically the person I didn't have. So
Mm,
it's kind of maybe when somebody learns about something new, then they want to always go tell everybody else. So for me, I was like, wait, did y'all know that you could like pick all your own stuff and your child will still be like very well educated and they'll still be all the things that you dreamt of and then some because you'll be putting them into the world or releasing them as a whole person, not just about what they score on their SAT, but about who they are and what they think about themselves. Um, and so I started talking about that all the time, but people were like, "Yeah, I know. I want to do that, but do what? Because if you look up what are the best books to read for children, it's going to pull up a list and the whole list is going to be like 100 beautiful books and kids like that look like your kid won't be in any of them."
Mm.
unless it's a book about slaves. So there won't be anything about your kid. And if you look up, all of this different curriculum, the top rated this, the top rated that, there won't be a picture, there won't be a mention beyond Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and slavery. Um, and so I guess I was just like, there has to be something else out there better than that. And then once I started finding it or really creating it, then I wanted to tell everybody about it. It was like, girl, let me tell you what I did with my kids. Yesterday, we started out studying this person and we flipped over to this person. Then we ended up dancing to James Brown in the kitchen. Like I just had to tell people, like, you have no idea how much joy is flowing from this. And they were like, well, send me the links to what you did, or what were you listening to, or what were you guys reading? And so I started sharing that on my blog. And that kind of is how it took off. It was like, I'm doing these really cool things and I want to tell you about it so that you won't have to scrape and fight and figure out the way that I have had to do. There's no reason for you to repeat that work if I've already done it. And
Yes.
that's kind of how it all got started.
That's beautiful. Sharing and
Mhm.
caring. You out here
Yeah.
sharing and caring. Okay. Are you all, is it like also co-op-ish or organization wise? Like, do you have meetings? Like, how does,
So if you kind
what
of
kind
think
of
of it like
services?
yeah,
Yes.
so there's Heritage Mom, and she's
Mm-hmm.
national, right? Like public facing, books, conferences, meeting people, doing all that. And then there's Heritage Homeschoolers, and that's not
Okay.
Heritage Mom, that's Amber. And that's
Okay.
local. They all know me. These are the moms and dads my kids run up and hug. And that organization is just local. We're not selling anything. It's a nonprofit, and there's a co-op, and that's the village that my children have been raised in. Will be 8 years old coming up soon. So for my youngest was an infant in arms when I started that group. So my kids literally don't know anything else. And that's our
Nice.
village. So it's kind of both. The village doesn't even care about Heritage Mom. They're like, whatever. Amber leaves town a lot and goes and does stuff. We don't know what she's doing. But she comes back here and she's just Amber. So that's kind of how it works.
Okay, nice. So how often does Heritage Mom meet? How often do you all meet?
So that I don't really meet with the business at firm. I travel to other places and locations to speak.
Okay.
And I usually try not to travel more than once a month. So that's why
Okay.
my 2024 schedule, it's all full because I would have to travel more than once a month. And the only time I travel more than that is if I bring my family with me. But in terms of me flying out, so like last week I was in Indiana at a homeschool conference. Next week I'll be in California. So I just kind of travel around and spread these ideas and messages. And I talk about other things too. I mean, a lot of people have it's like, okay, she's the one who talks about how your kids need to be doing all this black stuff. But I have other areas that I talk about and topics just in general of just being a mom, right? I'm a black mom, but I'm also just a mom, and I have other things that I speak about as well.
Okay. How often does your co-op meet?
Oh, weekly, every Thursday, all
Weekly.
day.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
all day.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's great. It's great. And we have a lot of other stuff. The co-op is only a couple years old, but the group is almost 8 years old. So we also
Okay.
do field trips and mom's night out and dad's night out and dances. We have a high school spring fling dance coming up, and we do like all kind of hikes, and we go camping. We take trips, just a graduation ceremony. It's kind of like this is our village is the only word I can think of. It's our community, like that we're doing life with. So like if my kids go to a birthday party, 95% of the time it's going to be from kids from this group. And this is whose house we go to for cookouts. And these are the people that come to our house for dinner. And so we've just kind of created this, it's like a little world for our kids. In a way, you could say it's kind of it's a, it's a world within a world. So they are very cocooned in a very, very loving and dynamic community that's not anything similar to the world around them.
Okay. Nice. How many families do you feel like you have in there?
So this year we have 84
Oh,
families. We got up
wow.
to like 105 during COVID. But yeah, we're 84 families, so we're serving hundreds of kids. It's a really big group. It is though like a lot like church. Like you might have 100 people on the roster, but they ain't all coming on Sunday. So
Gotcha.
it's like that. We do have, 84 paid member families, but you would never come to an event and see all 84 families represented. So everybody kind of picks and chooses on the calendar the things that they want to do. Um and yeah, but it's really it's something special.
Nice. So how does that group look? Does it, as far as the dynamics go, do you have parents that lead instruction? Like when y'all meet on Thursday, what are y'all meeting for? Like just
Okay,
community
so
fellowship?
no, the kids are in class at 10 o'clock, an 11
Okay.
o'clock class, and then at 12, they have lunch and recess, and then a 1 o'clock class and a 2 o'clock class, and then we end at 3. It is a combination of parent-led, moms and dads. Our dads are very active in our group. A combination of moms and dads, and then sometimes we'll hire out a teacher, like our band teacher we hired out because don't nobody know how to play the saxophone. Uh, so things like that. But it is like we have a chess teacher who's like a super competitive chess person or whatever, chess person. So we have a combination of in-house and external teachers that come in and work with the kids.
Nice. Okay. Beautiful. That's a nice size community. That's why I was trying to picture like, okay, how
Yeah.
many of y'all? Okay,
I mean, so
that's
the kids feel like
amazing.
they're in school that day, right? They have tons of
Yes.
friends and classmates. We have all the way from the little preschool siblings that have their own class and their own activities, all the way through high school.
Nice.
So, and the classes change every so often or whatever. So they go on Thursday, they see their family. And I always tell people it's like they're going to school, but no one ever complains and they all want to go. And one day, like one of my kids wasn't acting right. And I hadn't even thought anything of it. I was just like, okay, well, if you don't get yourself together and get your attitude together, you won't be going on Thursday. Oh boy, you would have thought that I said, you're going to have to sleep outside on the sidewalk naked. I mean, the lips started trembling and
Oh,
yeah. So I wouldn't have even I wasn't even thinking that it was that serious for them. But that moment made me realize that these kids love being there. So, yeah, that's just a thing that our family looks forward to every week.
nice. And this is a community that you built.
Yeah.
Okay, you saw a need. You was like, hey, okay, my children need some people. So let me build it so they can come.
Right, and people are like, "Well, how could your kids?" Because in my book, I talk about how my daughter was the only Black homeschooler in everything we did, and people are like, "But you
Mm,
live in Atlanta." I said, "No, I live outside of Atlanta, and if you've ever been here, Metro Atlanta is huge, and in the area where we live, we never saw anybody else. I saw Judy that one day and it was a master fake out because there was nobody else and it was lonely and it was hard. And so the group is not based in the city of Atlanta. There are other groups there, but it's out in the suburb that in the county where we live. And that's what the families that it attracts are those families out there. And I was shocked that there were even that many Black homeschooling families, but we also pull in, some of them are traveling up to an hour to come
oh
as well.
wow, okay.
So it's a very unique program. All of the kids in the program are Black, but not all of the parents are. So we have families who have adopted Black children, we have interracial couples, all kinds of different scenarios. We have a couple of grandparents who are raising kids, homeschooling their grandkids, and whatever. But it's just I mean, you can't imagine going into this space and just seeing you see all the girls with their hair and they're so proud of it and it doesn't sound like a big deal, but I had a problem with that with my daughter. Why do
Mm,
I have to wear braids? Why can't I have my hair straight like that? And then we got in that group, girl, she was like, "Oh, braid me up," like or whatever. And I was like, people try to tell us like representation is overrated.
representation,
I'm so
yeah.
tired of hearing about all this Black stuff all the time. DEI, woke, CRT. You can say all that you want to say, but I've seen it with my own eyes, and there's nothing you can tell me to to change my mind on this. The representation matters.
Yes,
My child
ma'am.
became a completely different person when
Mm,
she started seeing all these images around her of things that were familiar to her, and literally went from like wanting to be Elsa, to be like, can you
Mm,
put beads on the end of my braids? I mean,
yes,
it's a small thing to someone who doesn't understand, but to a Black mom, you understand how big of a shift that was. And
yes,
that's just in
ma'am.
hair, but you think about the way you feel about how you look in appearance, but the way you interact with people. When I see them walk in and run up and hug people, adults, and say, "Oh, look, I brought that rock I told you about. Like, let me show you my rock." And so there's like this deep intimacy that exists there. And we had tried a lot of other groups, and they were nice to my kids. They were cordial, kind. No one was mean to them. But girl, my kids were not running up to anybody trying to show them their rock, right? And so when I see that, I'm just like, these kids feel like these are other trusted parents. They're like that care about them and would even care enough to see your favorite rock. Um, and that's something you can't buy, you
Yeah.
can't create, it's something that has to be genuine and real. And we have that there.
I love that you put so much emphasis on identity,
Mm,
because that's something that I speak on as far as the public school aspect goes, and the lack of identity that we leave with after graduation, as far as Black kids go,
yeah,
because of the representation that we're seeing, like you said, the Martin, the Rosa, and then slaves. Martin, Rosa, Malcolm, then slaves. Like that's
yeah, yeah,
that's basically what we get, and I've always felt like identity is something that homeschool allows you to recapture and to build out early on, as opposed to later on. Because, we reach our 30s and we're like, well, damn, I don't really know much about myself, like where I
yeah.
came from. And so it's like, awareness that brings you to like, why, how can I break this cycle? Because I want my kids to know about themselves. I want them to know where they came from, what flows through them, who they are, what all they can be. And it's important. Like I
It's
don't,
important. And that's where
yeah,
I said, it's this journey was on behalf of my children, but make no mistake about it, I'm changed
yeah,
because every story I read to them, every person I introduced them to, every song I sang alongside them, that was entering me too as a
yeah,
student, right? So I'm the guide and I'm the teacher, but I always tell people I'm only 3 nights ahead of my oldest. I stay up late at night researching, following rabbit trails, listening to other people. I'm 3 nights ahead of her. So we're
mm,
kind of in the same grade. I'm in high school now, you know what I
yeah,
mean? In terms of having a true understanding, an identity building understanding of who I am and where I've come from. And another funny thing is, I tell people my 8-year-old, and I mean this in all seriousness, my 8-year-old knows more about Black culture and the beauty of it and history than I knew when I graduated.
yes, ma'am.
So, I mean, that's hard to imagine an 8-year-old. He could run circles around where I was. So it's really a kind of gutting of everything that I'd ever known in terms of education and a reordering of affection, really.
Yes. But I love that you keep putting emphasis on the fact that you're learning also. Like all this is like, and it's okay.
We're
Like,
totally, we're learning all, I mean, that's the thing that's crazy. I'm just like, these kids are, I mean, it blows my mind. And the proof is in the pudding. My daughter has started taking her first, like, kind of dual enrollment college courses online for high school credit and just putting her toe in the water or whatever. And she was like, Mom, this is easy. And I was
right.
like, what do you mean? She's like, this is much easier than your class. And so I'm like, these kids are prepared. And it's funny because a lot of people would be like, oh, Amber's like a hippie, like they're like, do you even do school? But we have been. We've been doing school day in and day out, slowly but surely, but it's looked leisurely from the outside and
Mm,
it's felt leisurely, but we always do it. We're always at it, but it might not always look like we're at it. And now I see, here's this child who's telling me that her first college courses are easy. And
right.
I think that, and that's our kids who have never gotten a grade, never had a test, never been tested outside, except for every 3 years, we have to test in the state of Georgia, like a standardized test, but we don't
Mm,
study for it. They've never had tests in between, never been given a report card. And here she busts out the college class like it was nothing. So I think that I think we've been sold a bill of goods in terms of what
mm.
school has to look like and what all they have to know on the checklist and the order and the standards and all that. Children raised in a learning rich environment learn.
Yes,
And I think
ma'am.
that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. The proof, like you said, the proof is in the pudding. She done knocked out that college course and told you that your rigor is a bit more tougher than theirs.
Yep.
So, no, that's awesome. Okay, so I always think on like, okay, what do families hear when they're talking about homeschooling? What kind of adversity do they face? How is your family in accepting what you all are doing? How supportive was your, like,
Your
your
parents,
like,
yeah,
yeah,
parents and all that stuff.
parents,
So
all,
yeah, well,
yeah.
my mom was like, "What are you doing? Like, that's crazy." Like when we first told her we were going to homeschool, and her concern was as a principal, she had always seen the worst stories. That she's seen two things of homeschoolers. Parents get upset when you're trying to help their kids and they don't like it. Like, that's fine. I'm just going to take my kid and homeschool them. So they see the
Mm,
angry, parent who snatches the kid out of school. And then they also would see the result of kids getting dumped back into school after being neglected. So they're
mm.
like, "Well, we've been homeschooled." They come, they can't read, they can't write, they don't know anything, and just like they haven't been doing anything. And so that was her representation from her position and her experience of what homeschoolers were. And I was like, "Mom, those are like the extremes." I said, "You haven't met anybody in the middle, which is where most people are, and that is that the homeschoolers I see, there's no one more committed to their children's learning. Nobody is sitting here all day doing nothing. That's not even, and I know that that exists, but school shootings also exist. But we
Mm.
don't register when we think of public school. We don't just say every school shooting happens every time. That's not the norm. It's a terrible byproduct, but it's not the norm. And that's the same thing with homeschooling. There are some terrible homeschooling parents, but that's not the norm.
Yes.
And so she ended up like over the years seeing it. And since then, she has told me, like, this was the best decision you ever made. This is
Oh.
amazing. I can't believe it. She sings the praises of homeschooling to everyone. And she even told me, I wish I had homeschooled you. She's like, I had no idea.
Oh.
So she has, we made a believer out of her. And so that's
Oh.
been a really good thing. I think some of the hardest ones have been conversations with older Black generation, and they're like, "Man, we fought hard for y'all to be able to go to school, and now you're like, I don't wanna go." And I've addressed that. I thought about it for a long time because I don't ever wanna feel like I don't appreciate the work of the generations before us. But my thing is, was it really fighting so we could go to school, or was it fighting for freedom?
Mm.
Like we weren't free. Like, it's you're free to be able to have access to the things that you think your child needs. That's what you're really fighting for.
Yes.
Um, and then you got it, and it wasn't like they wanted you there. It was a psychologically, emotionally tumultuous time for Black children.
Yes.
Yes, they got better books and a cleaner building, but they lost the love of the teachers that they had had and the people who respected them and knew them. So to me, this is just a outpouring of the freedom that other people fought for. And this is the ultimate freedom for me to say what I think
Mm.
is best for my kid is to be at home with us.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So I think that's kind of, yeah, those are the only things that I've really heard. For the most part, people are pretty supportive, or people say, I could never stay home with my kids. I'm too impatient and I just cannot have that much patience. A lot of stuff about patience. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, we have rough days. Sometimes I'm just very impatient too. It's not like we're sitting around here like Pollyanna all day, like, oh, kids, it's so welcome to the table. Sometimes I'm like, dude, just sit down and do your work, or whatever. Or we have to take mental health days.
Yeah.
Sometimes I yell at my kids. I don't want to do that. That's not a good thing to do, but I'm just saying have to tell people that because it's like they think like if they're not a perfect person, they can't homeschool. And sometimes my kids have bad days too. Sometimes they're being jerks to each other, to me. But we can address those things and take a time out and just let
Ma'am.
people experience the ups and downs of life,
Yes, ma'am. What does your self-care look like? What does that time for you to keep balance and be able to bring your best self to the table every day? What does that look like for you?
Well, because I travel around the country to speak, I do get nights in a hotel by myself regularly, right? So when I'm done speaking and smiling and shaking hands and kissing babies all day, I go back to my room and just like decompress. Um, for me, it's really reading. That's how I kind of just get lost, and that's how I've been my whole life. So, a hot tea and a book and nobody talking to me. That is
Yeah.
like my best form of self-care. Don't talk to me, don't ask me for anything. Just kind of find my little corner, and we have like a screened-in porch out back, and go out there on a rainy day with a book and some tea, maybe fall asleep while I'm out there. Like that's like heaven to me. I'm a simple person. But I also
Yes.
do other stuff like this weekend. I'm leaving on Thursday to go on a mom's retreat with our homeschool group. So we're going up into the
Nice.
mountains and we're staying in a cabin. So yeah, just different things like that.
Nice. Beautiful. Because the self-care is necessary.
Oh
I
yeah.
love that. Please, more on your book, the book
Mhm.
that you've written.
Yeah.
Tell us.
So it's called A Place to Belong, and it basically is a, if I could say, step-by-step explanation of what we've done in our home. It
Mm,
addresses each chapter's on a kind of a different part of the home. If you want to say the conversations at the dinner table, what does that look like? The books that we read, what does that look like? How do I teach hard history? Black history has some very hard elements to it. How do I teach that? There's a chapter on that. And the next chapter is, how do I talk about the joy of
mm,
being Black history? And I talk about it in relationship to anybody can do that. I happen to be Black, so that's what I'm talking about from my frame, but someone could apply it to their own context and it would work perfectly for them. I talk about our travels and what that has meant for our world schooling and how we've integrated world travel in with our homeschooling. And just kind of give a blueprint for like what this type of life could look like. And in terms of this type, it's a life where your children feel so deeply rooted within their home that they're confident about spreading wide branches out toward other people. But, for me, I saw a lot of people talking about, relationships with other people. Oh, be kind. We teach our kids be kind to other people, care about them, listen to their stories, whatever. What about our kids' stories?
mm,
Are we being kind to our kids? Do they feel like they're important or like they matter? Because when I go to the, homeschool expos and I look around at all the resources available to homeschoolers, those don't look like loving, caring resources for little kids like mine.
mm.
Um, and so the question becomes, how can we turn that around into a world where our children are like, oh, I know my mama love me. I know I'm valued. Come from a long line of people who've been killing it from ancient times.
Yeah.
And I feel confident about where I'm going. And yeah, I can be friends with all these different types of people easily because I don't feel threatened by your success or your difference or your sameness because I love who I am. That's kind of the idea behind it. And there's so much more in the book. That's like a high
Oh,
level
I'm
overview.
sure.
But there are
Yes.
discussion questions for every chapter, so it's really great to read for groups. And it's not just for homeschoolers, but because I'm a homeschooler, that it very much resonates with homeschoolers, but it's actually for all parents.
Nice. A place to belong.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Where can we find that?
You can find it on my website at heritagemom.com, but it's easier to just get it wherever you normally buy books. So your little indie local bookstore can order it, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Target.com, all those places.
Nice, nice. I appreciate you. You are amazing. And you're
Oh,
so like, you know, chill. Like chill. It's like, I know what you see. I know what you've seen, but understand like it's not that deep. And I love the informal, like you put in there that you like things to be more informal.
yeah.
Because it is about creating what works for you.
Yeah.
And it looks like you created the master plan for you all. I appreciate that. I
Yeah,
love
thank
that you are
you.
the representation of that.
Mm.
Big
Thank
deal.
you for having me, and thanks for the work that you're doing to
Of
build
course.
confidence, right, in other
Yes.
parents
That
that
is
they
the
can
goal.
know that they can do this and that they're not alone, and that, you know, it doesn't take it doesn't take much beyond intention and a deep and abiding desire and love for your children that you're willing to move all mountains. But yeah, I would encourage anybody listening to just feel that you can do it, and that all of us at some point have probably been like, "What am I doing?"
Yeah.
And that it all works out.
Always works out. It
Mhm.
always works out. Trust your gut. Trust your
Yeah.
trust yourself. Well, before I let you go, Amber, and you already kind of did it, but can you give me three things for new homeschoolers as they approach this world? What are three jewels that you would like to drop on them to carry along their way?
Okay. The first would be that you are the special sauce of your homeschool. Your homeschool is not going to look like anybody else's. It's not going to be exactly like that. You can get a lot of good ideas from other people, and you should. That's great. Idea sharing, and you make it work for your family, but it's definitely not going to look like school. And it's going to be different because you're not in that other house, but you're in this house, and you bring certain things, a special way of dealing with your children that no other person on the earth could ever do your way. So that would be my first thing, is to like embrace your own special sauce and like value it, like, yes, it's spicy over here because I'm here. And I would say another thing would be to relax, that you don't have to run this super fast, hard race to compete and like make sure that but it's a slow and steady. Just keep showing up every day. Every day your family gets up and you do your thing, whatever your thing is, and you keep doing it. And the next day you get up and you keep doing it. And that those days turn into weeks and months and turn into years
Mm,
and then decades, right? And you've put forth something very beautiful for your kids. And then the last thing I would say is to be a support system for other people, that we have to have each other, because a lot of us are newer to this game than our counterparts who have been at this for decades of doing this. And so if you've been homeschooling for 5 years, you're like an old head, right? In our communities. And you have to help the other moms and dads, because that's how we're all going to rise together. So if you've got confidence and you've figured things out, don't keep it to yourself. Get out there and evangelize, right, to your
yeah.
sisters and brothers and help them to be able to do what you've done for your family.
Nice. Beautiful advice. Great gems. Great
Mhm.
gems. Definitely. Where can we find Heritage Mom?
Yeah, it's really easy. heritagemom.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there and be notified whenever I drop new things. I share so many recommendations, all the things Black. You can look up a history time period and bam, here are all the books, elementary, middle school. Here's what my high schoolers reading and all of that. And then on social media, on Instagram and Facebook at Heritage Mom Blog. And my book can be found at a place to belong book.com, or like I said, wherever books are sold.
Nice. Thank you so much, Amber. Thank you for your transparency. Thank you for just sharing your journey in general. I really appreciate that. Families, understand that one, as I always remind you, it's not a journey you have to take alone. Two, the resources are available. Check them out. Check out Heritage Mom. Check out her blog. Check out her book. Just find the resources that work for you and your family. Understand that they are available. You just have to do the work and do the look and listen to my podcast so that you can know what's out there. You know,
Yeah.
keep tuning in. But no, I appreciate you, Amber. I do. And I know families will continue to utilize all that you are dishing out. And just thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being you to the point where it's like, you know what? Other people need to know how free they can be. Because that's
Yeah.
like you mentioned that before. And that's what this is. It's a touch of freedom. So,
Yeah. I love
yeah,
that.
yes, yes, yes. But in the meantime, parents, remember to always homeschool your kids.